Now we have gone through a number of inspiring initiatives around rural mobility and how communities are coming together to implement mobility solutions at local level. And now we want to create a space for actually all of you. We are nearly 70 people here today. So we want to create a space for you to exchange and debate around rural mobility on some of the key aspects and key topics that are important around that in different groups. But before we go that, we would like to put a bit of a trigger, spark that discussion. And we have invited 4 experts, practitioners, to discuss with us some of the key insights that they would like to bring on the table for the exchange and discussions in the different topics. So in this panel, I would like to welcome Jenni Eckhardt from the VTT Technical Research Centre of Finland. Welcome, Jenni. Thanks for being with us today. As well, I'd like to invite Edina Ocsko. She's the Vice Chair of the Rural Pact Coordination Group, and also involved in smart villages and rural mobility in SmartNet. I would like to welcome as well Rafael Amorim. I'd like to ask my colleagues to put already people with me. Rafael Amorim is from the Intermunicipal community of Cávado in Portugal. Thank you for joining us, Rafael. And then also Mosdale from Rural Mobility Mountain Areas from the DINAMO project implemented by CIPRA in France. So let me see if I have all the panelists here with me. And let me start with Jenni. Jenni, welcome and thank you for joining us. You are researching on a very interesting topic, and it was mentioned already several times today on the transport poverty. What is your research saying about that?
Okay, so first to introduce the project. So at VTT, we are doing together with University of Vaasa a project about energy and transport poverty in rural areas funded by the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry of Finland. And in that research, we are studying what is the current state of transport poverty in Finland. And then also we are making some recommendations. And this current state is based on literature review and also surveys and interviews. And we had a survey for inhabitants and we got over 700 responses. So the definition of transport poverty is not well established generally, and there are different definitions. And for example, in Finland, accessibility poverty is often used in literature, and it is about can people reach their basic daily needs with a reasonable time, ease, and cost. And based on our survey, 77% of respondents found that they can reach within a reasonable time. 74 answered that they can reach based on within a reasonable ease, but only 34% said that they can reach the services within a reasonable cost. So this is also a term of transport affordability. So is there a lack of individual resources to afford transportation? And also based on the survey, we found that 11% of the respondents say that they have a forced car ownership. So they have difficulties of paying other bills because of the car ownership. And then there's also a term of mobility poverty related to transport poverty, and it's about the systematic lack of mobility options. And also based on our research, we found that this is also an important topic. So it's mostly based on our research, it's transport affordability and mobility poverty are the main aspects of transport poverty.
So it's a very important angle. We have been looking at projects from the angle of providing the opportunities for people to move, but even sometimes when they have those opportunities, the cost is a barrier. And many of the projects we have seen as well, funding and how to make these projects affordable, these initiatives and transport affordable has been a big issue. We are focusing today around local communities and community-based responses for rural mobility. We have with us Edina Ocsko, who has been working on smart villages for the last years. Edina, what can smart villages bring to rural mobility? What is your experience in the last years on that?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the invitation and good to see so many familiar faces. So yeah, as you said, Enrique, I think one of the key aspects of smart village is that it acts at the very local level. So if you take the characteristics of smart villages, that's one of them, that it's a local community level action. For instance, one of the aspects that distinguishes slightly this concept from LEADER. And of course, the other ones are innovation, kind of strategic thinking and participatory approach. So these are some key components for those who are familiar, also for those who are not, and those who are familiar with the concept. And of course, mobility is one of the key topics that smart villages are dealing with. So firstly, if you take the local aspect, it's always needs driven. So of course, at the local level, the needs can be best identified. In a recent discussion in a SmartNet event, also it was highlighted by many participants that of course there are specific target groups, such as families, often women who carry around the kids, people with disabilities. I think that's one of the key things, that it's very much local needs driven. And I think the examples presented today very nicely showed that. The other thing which is important is the strategic approach. So mobility in the smart villages context cannot be treated in an isolated way. So what we see that it's very much linked to many other aspects of a strategic thinking at the community level. Of course, the access to services and economic things, but most of all, climate and sustainability. So we see that many communities, interestingly, who work on climate and energy issues, they also work on mobility or somehow link sustainable mobility that. So I think it's very important to emphasize that it's a holistic approach and a strategic approach. And the other one is participation. Of course, it often relies on voluntary contribution, as we saw today. But of course, it's a key interest of local public authorities. But sometimes, for instance, we are working with a community in Italy, in Ostana, where it's a smart village and it's a key topic. And they are really working now actively with a private company who provides an e-bus service and data collection. So this is a very important. And maybe just the last point, that I think a common aspect in all this is the shared mobility solutions. So that what makes it community-based, but also the sustainability aspect, as I said, very often connected to climate. But what we see as well, that the innovations are often small scale, so not the most high-tech aspects, but I think it's more about social innovation, really, as we heard today, like how the community is mobilized, how the different solutions are organized. So I think it's very much about the new processes and the way it's being organized. But we also see some bigger innovations, for instance, renewable energy island we've worked with in Smart Road 27, Samsø in Denmark. It's worth checking out as a lighthouse example. For instance, they are introducing, after becoming an energy island, an electric ferry for the first time. So there are bigger scale innovations, but I think the social innovation aspect is the most important, which resonates with smart villages as well.
Sorry, I muted myself. Thank you very much, Edina. I think you bring very interesting points, I think, that could be taken later on in the discussion, this aspect of social innovation, mobilizing the community. You mentioned as well the importance of local municipalities, and that gives me as well the very good hint to invite Rafael Amorim, who is part of the Intermunicipal community of Cávado, which is an association or a grouping of different municipalities, rural municipalities in Portugal. So Rafael, Edina was talking about the social innovation aspect, the cooperation aspect, pulling the different territories sometimes to scale up and have the capacity to work on these local solutions. how is this collaboration working on your area to implement these mobility solutions? What could you say to others that would like to do something similar?
Thank you so much for the invitation. Good morning to you all. Good morning, especially to Pascal, Edina, and Julie, that are key elements for the development of especially of the Rural Pact Coordination Group. We are a very small entity. We have around 400,000 inhabitants here in our region. It's 6 municipalities, 6 local authorities, only 3 transport authorities at all. And since 2019, in the Portuguese government has allowed that intermunicipal entities like our own will be responsible for the management of the public road transportation. This is only entered in force in 2023. And then the mobility of the population of Cávado experienced a significant increase. In accordance with the parameters that were defined by the government of Portugal in 2020-2021, there must be a minimum level of service that has to be met through our territory. This means that we need at least 2 daily circulations from the head of the municipal territory to places with 40 or more inhabitants. This is what we call the minimum level, and this minimum level is met in all our territory that goes from the sea to the mountains. Although there are areas that have some interruptions during school holidays, for instance, and we are seeing if we can provide a more flexible mobility project that could be activated by the population through telephone reservations. But our intervention for now, it's in a very early stage. Just to give you some numbers, we have annual kilometer production around 5,000 kilometers, 78 lines. Deficit amount, this is the total amount that our municipalities have to pay the transport, around 6,000 euros per year. There is also an attempt to try to create more liaisons between urban and rural, because we are a urban territory. We have 2 major cities, Braga and Barcelos, but all the rest are in rural areas. So for us, in this stage, as I told you, this is a very early stage. We prefer to implement what we do with bus lines, then promote a more flexible approach. But we are trying to see if we can manage them both. By the way, just to let you know that we still have a strong appeal from individual transportation here in our territory. People still maintain their cars and still go to work with their cars, go to school to their cars, especially students. That is something that hurts me a lot, because a lot of us in Braga, for instance, as Braga and Barcelos, as 2 major institutions or universities, very big one with more than 6,000 students. The other one, I don't know, but it's more than 13 or 14,000 students. And there is a mutualization of the individual transport. However, we are seeing, especially between January 2023 and January 2024, an increase on the I don't know how this is said in English, but the students can have a free pass to public transportation by buses if they are under 18 and under 23 and are in any level of education. So we are seeing an increase. So we expect that in the near future, this will be there will be another increase, an even more bigger increase, and people can let their cars at home where they should be. Henrique, you are muted.
Thank you, Rafael. Thank you for the interesting experience based on the collaboration between different municipalities taking charge in Portugal, delegating the responsibility for transport in rural areas. I take the interesting concept of having some minimum service needed to be guaranteed. I'm not sure that it's the case elsewhere in Europe as a way to push for taking probably action on rural mobility and not leave them behind in that sort of service. So I think it's a very interesting point. I'd like to welcome now Lauren Mosdale. She's working on a very particular context as well for many of our rural areas, which is on mountainous areas. And she has had experience as well in implementing mobility initiatives in those areas. So from that perspective, Lauren, what are the takes that you can take from working on mobility on such a remote areas in terms of satisfying the needs of the inhabitants? And as well, particularly you work on the Alps and it's very linked to tourism. So what can you say to us in terms of your learnings from that experience?
Thank you. Today, I'm particularly speaking on behalf of an Erasmus Plus project, because we've been working on the DINAMO project, which is a partnership between Germany and France. But you're right, it's in the specific context of the Alps, and specifically, the specifics of the specifics, rural territories and not ski stations, which is quite different, two different territories, because the ski resorts would have usually pretty good means of mobility in France and Germany anyway, in any case, to reach the ski station. So we focused on rural territories, and we've been working for a year with municipalities specifically, who have a mobility strategy already to see how it emerged and what they're doing. So I have two different examples I can tell you about. So there's one municipality in Germany where actually the COVID crisis was what made them want to change and develop an eco model. And so there was a larger public participation in this public consultation. It really worked. And it was based on the donut theory of Kate Raworth. I never know how to say her name, Raworth, where you try to stay in the boundaries, the planet boundaries. And the main finding from this, and it's a common finding in lots of mountain areas now, is that mobility is for the people who live there and not for the tourists in first place. And that if you have a solid, consolidated mobility system that's in place for the inhabitants, it's easier to develop that for tourists during the high peak season than the other way around. And so in Germany, this pushed the municipality to develop a public-private partnership with a bus company and to do on-demand mobility. So there's a bus that goes around and there's an app that inhabitants can use, and it's subsidized by the municipality for tourists who take a night, who pay for a hotel night in the municipality, I think, and for inhabitants, of course. And it's quite interesting because the other territory we had in the project was a French territory with, well, there's differences in budgets and funding of municipalities, depending on countries, of course. But so in France, they had less budget, so they couldn't do this public-private partnership. But it's still the same idea, is that mobility is a policy priority for the people who live there first, and then for the tourists. And so here I'm going to support what Edina said before, that there's sometimes no need for high tech, and that in the Chartreuse Massif, which was our second example, I think what they're the most proud of is actually a WhatsApp group for carpooling. Well, there's lots of other initiatives, of course, but to illustrate this is that I think they were approached by BlaBlaCar Daily, the company who likes to implement public-private partnerships with départements or municipalities, depends on the local authority. And the Chartreuse Massif actually said no to BlaBlaCar Daily because they had a better, it worked better with the WhatsApp group than with the official app from the big company. So that was quite funny. But they also have two major axes. So it's youth, which joins what Rafael was saying beforehand, the schools and students. So they try to teach kids from the younger age to share their bikes, to share, to organize carpool when they're students, etc. And then there's a whole priority on access to mobility for everyone, which means that often in mountain territories, the e-bikes would be for tourists, for instance, and you should go to a rental shop to get an e-bike. And so the municipalities tried to appropriate this system and to either subsidize for inhabitants the rental of e-bikes in the tourist shops, or to directly rent e-bikes and even cars, sometimes electric cars, to the inhabitants. So that's the two examples I had to share today. And yeah, really this main idea that there's been this change in mindsets of developing mobility for inhabitants first and tourists afterwards.
No, very, very interesting aspects. I take as well the point of solutions being built through public-private partnerships. I think probably this is something relevant as well in the context of municipalities that might not have the capacity to finance themselves directly. Probably the issue of finance would be something that we need to explore a bit more deeper in the group discussions, and how do we ensure that there is the right finance, not only for the solution, but here I'm hearing as well a lot about animating the community, bringing it together, volunteering work, how reliable is that, etc. So probably this is an aspect we could take later on. But I would like to get back to Jenni. You mentioned poverty, so it's not just about the solution, it's being able to access the solution. What are the main reasons causing transport poverty in Finnish rural areas? And I just want to remind you all, we have around 8 minutes, so I would really like in this last round that you keep it short, and hopefully we can give the floor to some that are not yet in the here with us to raise as well. So raise the hand, other colleagues, please, and I might be able to give you the floor. So Jenni, reasons for transport poverty in rural Finland.
Okay, thank you. So based on our survey, it was the lack of public transportation. Over half of respondents said so, but also unsuitable schedules of public transport and that the stop is located too far. And there was also lack of taxis, and also the price was high. And generally about driving, over half of the respondents said that driving is the only option, but they cannot afford it like before. And what was also surprising, that over a third of the respondents said that there's no safe enough mobility option. So for example, the roadsides are too narrow, there's no lights, there's no like bicycle routes and so on. So it was the reason why they didn't walk or cycle, even though the distance wouldn't be so far. And of course, this affects also the health of people if they don't do active mobility. And generally, like there's poor possibilities for mobility, it affects that people, they skip mobility regularly. So let's say that 1/4 skipped regularly. And of course, there were like that kind of that are not necessarily obligatory. So if they went less shopping or they did less hobbies, but there were many important things also that they skipped, like healthcare and work and school because of the poor mobility. So there are many these kind of reasons that that the mobility causes. But let's say that it's the public transportation, lack of it, and the cost that are the most important reason why people, they don't do things that they would need to do.
Thank you, Jenni. I think it's interesting the point you mentioned around poverty. I think infrastructure, proper infrastructure, but also another point you started with is management, is designing the mobility solutions that fit the local context. Lauren mentioned BlaBlaCar does not fit in the rural area. Sometimes, you know, there is no one solution that fits everywhere. Probably this thing that Edina was mentioning of working strategically with local actors, empower them to be able to have their own solutions is actually the key, probably to be able to fight transport poverty in your case.
Yes, also rural areas are very different.
Exactly. And regarding to that, Edina, with the concept of smart villages, which is very bottom up, which is working with is working with the communities, how this concept can work, or to what extent are they working already on raising awareness about rural mobility issues? How they find these solutions to rural mobility is a very technical aspect. It's not very easy to work probably with the know-how that you might find in the area. So how is it being tackled in the smart villages?
I mean, of course, so one aspect which I haven't talked about, and maybe it's not the main characteristic, but it's still also in the initial definition of smart villages, is the cooperation aspect. And I think that's what kind of Rafael was referring to at the beginning, but also Laura mentioned, for instance, in the mountain areas, this cooperation between communities. So not just because, as I said, it's often not very high-tech solutions, but I think mobility is a typical issue where the cooperation of different municipalities is really required. So because they are connected also, Ostana, we work with in Italy, they want to cooperate more with the nearby communities, because that's how often transport solutions can be found. So I think we heard today a lot of examples. So I think it's not things which are high tech and highly innovative, but this really what I stressed. I think the way they are being organized and the way the stakeholders are engaged are important. But maybe one more thing that I wanted to highlight in this last minute is that it's also very important in the smart villages context as well to cooperate with the regional level. So it's very nice when there are regional initiatives. Often that's the level. We often discuss in SmartNet what's the best level to act in terms of mobility. And I think in this specific case, it's very important to coordinate, and that the regional level takes into account not just the big cities and the larger municipalities' interests, but the rural interests. We heard, for instance, a very good example from Flanders during the recent SmartNet event, where they really engage local communities in the planning of these actions, and each community has one vote, the same as big cities. And I think these approaches are very important to kind of think about not just the horizontal, but this kind of vertical action. And I think just to conclude, the Rural Pact can do a lot in this sense. And I think we could work more on these local rural pacts also in the mobility context. And it's also something we started to discuss in a recent SmartNet event.
Thank you very much, Edina. Probably you mentioned the working with the regional level, and that gives me a very good hint again to bring Rafael into the discussion, because when the alliance of different municipalities is a way of creating a region where you have some sort of critical mass to be able to work on transport mobility. On this strategic aspect, Rafael, what are the lessons from your experience? How these strategies for rural mobility can be built? Is it simple? Is it what are the elements that you would like to highlight for others to learn from your experience?
That's a very good question. As I said before, we are still at a very early stage. I repeat that only since January 2023 that we started to work in this team. So we started to organize the public transportation via buses. For our experience, the creation of a strong, regular, efficient network, it's the best medium it's the best for a medium and long-term solution for passenger mobility. This is the only way to create the conditions for the populations to see that they can still settle or be retained in rural areas, but can access some of the commodities that exist in urban areas. One of our key examples is the considerable amount of migration flow that we have here, not only of Brazilian populations, Pakistani, Bangladesh, but other nationalities that are blocked in the cities because the costs of housing, it's very big. So they seek accommodation in lower density areas, often rural ones. So we have to ensure that these new residents can travel for and to their places of work, often in cities, but ensure that their children have access to educational establishment and have access to other means of integration in our society as a whole. We are a very open and receptive society, so we have to work that. And in our case, what we see is that only a robust and regular, I have to underline this vocable, only a robust and regular network of buses can ensure a new mobility partners, because we are still at a very early stage.
Thank you, Rafael. I think it's very interesting, the point. Very much linked with the issues in many other areas around rural depopulation. It's, you know, we always say, what do we need to develop first, economic development or basic services? And mobility is definitely an essential aspect to ensure basic services are there. If we want families to move to rural areas or to stay in rural areas, they have to have access to schools in an easy way, healthcare, etc. So it's a very interesting point. Moving from the regional level to the more European and international aspect, Lauren, you are part of more kind of international context as well. With what is the role that these international networks, Rural Pact, could play further to move forward on the issue of rural mobility? What are the lessons or recommendations you could give?
In 30 seconds, I suppose. So CIPRA is for those who don't know, CIPRA, it's the International Commission for the Protection of the Alps. So we're really a network that's based in all 7 Alpine countries. And I would say that the project I talked about beforehand illustrates how we can work with communities and organize, for instance, study visits. Meanwhile, our executive council is actually working on a position paper on freight in the Alps for the Alpine Convention. So we're really in between, but that's our role. And so what are the needs why do people contact us? It's usually to relay their actions or to find contacts through us. So for instance, this exchange between Germany and France, but it happens on lots of other subjects apart from mobility. And actually, it's very technical maybe, but organizing study visits, it's a big need, and lots of people ask us to do that a lot. So our role would be to kind of survey, we can't survey everything that's going on, but have a look out for new initiatives or how things work elsewhere and really put people in contact so that they can find solutions, which then need to be tailored to their own place-based context.
Thank you very much, Lauren. And indeed, I appreciate the short answer and the effort you did. There are many, I see the chat is being very active. I hope this panel gave you good hints now to continue in the group discussion. We're going to be 1 hour together. I see questions that people were not able to answer. I see the question about the impression that the vicious circle is generating around intensification of mobility. Perhaps this question is a bit tricky. We need to discuss it more in depth in the group discussions. So I will welcome you to stay longer and to debate and be really active within your groups.